They said I was too old for romance. Too wrinkled. Too tired. They told me to stay out of the way while they planned their picture-perfect weddings, as if love had an expiration date. But I didn't just fall in love. I married someone they all now worship. And when they saw who it was, their jaws hit the floor. They say love fades with age. I used to believe that too, before the comments, before the jokes, before I became the punchline at my own family table. At 75, I'm supposed to have accepted my place. That's what my daughter Melissa says when I ask if she'll help me set up an online profile. You had your time, Mom, she says with a smirk, swirling her wine glass like she's swirling my dignity down the drain. You don't need romance. You need to knit and rest. My son-in-law laughs. Hey, maybe we can find her a bingo buddy. The rest of the table chuckles. I laugh too, but not because it's funny. I laugh because I've learned that when they don't see you as a person anymore, they'll say anything like you're not even there. It started after my husband, Dennis, passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Quick. Cruel. We'd been married for nearly 50 years. And while we weren't perfect, we were solid. After the funeral, I expected grief. I expected emptiness. What I didn't expect was invisibility. Suddenly, I was a burden. Melissa suggested I sell my house and move in with her. Not out of love, but convenience. A basement suite, she said, just until we figure things out. I went, because I didn't have the strength to argue. That was a mistake. Their basement was cold. Musty. Melissa's kids never came down to see me. I was just the live-in babysitter, called up when they needed a ride or a warm dinner. When I mentioned wanting to meet new people, Melissa scoffed. Mom, dating at your age is just sad. But I wasn't sad. I was lonely. And I still had hope. Late at night, I would scroll quietly on my phone. Sometimes I'd read articles. Sometimes old photos. Sometimes dating apps, not the silly hookup ones, but the ones that asked about books and coffee and long walks. I never made a profile. I was too embarrassed. Until I wasn't. One night, after being forgotten at dinner yet again, I crept upstairs to make myself a real meal. Chicken and rice. Fresh herbs. I even lit a candle. I sat alone at the kitchen table, their kitchen technically, and felt the warmth of the flame on my face. I opened my phone. And I made a profile. Simple. Honest. No filters. Just a real photo of me in my sage green cardigan, soft blue eyes looking back into the lens. My bio said, 75. Widowed. Still curious. Lover of books, baking, and meaningful conversation. I didn't expect anything. Not really. But a week later, I got a message. Hello, Nora. Your eyes look like they still see everything. I stared at the message. His name was Victor. 58, tall. Silver hair. Lived just one town over. Retired architect. I shouldn't have responded. But I did. What began as one message became 2, then 10, then daily conversations. We talked about our favorite authors, our childhood memories, our favorite breakfasts. We both hated weak coffee. Both had been underestimated. Both had been in love, and lost it. He never asked about my wrinkles. He never called me sweetie, or cute. He called me extraordinary. The first time we met, it was in the library cafe. A neutral place, I told him. Safe. He wore a charcoal gray blazer. I wore my sage green cardigan, and a pink lipstick I hadn't worn in years. He brought me a flower. A single iris. My favorite. And when he saw me, he stood. Like I mattered. We talked for 3 hours. After that, we met once a week. Then twice. Then he drove me to a small jazz concert, where we swayed together in the back row while everyone else just tapped their toes. I hadn't been held like that in years. Then came the night Melissa found out. She walked in while I was on a video call with Victor. I had put on a soft scarf, combed my hair. She paused in the doorway and blinked. Who are you talking to? I froze. But Victor smiled and said, Hi. You must be Melissa. I've heard good things. Melissa stared like he'd grown a second head. After I ended the call, she cornered me in the living room. Are you serious? She hissed. You're dating. I'm talking to someone, yes. At your age. That hit harder than I expected. Not because she said it, but because she meant it. She didn't see me as a woman. Just an aging body. A background character. I wanted to shout, I'm still me. But I didn't. I just said, I think you forget who I was before I became your mother. She rolled her eyes and left. After that, things changed. She became colder. Shorter. Made snide comments. Called me giddy. Told the kids I was going through a senior phase. One night at dinner she said, well, we can't all find someone who wants to date into a nursing home. I stood up. I looked her square in the eye and said, don't mistake my age for weakness, Melissa. Then I walked back downstairs. Victor heard it all later. I told him, voice shaking. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, do you want to leave? What? Do you want to live with someone who sees you? Fully. Honestly. Joyfully. I did. So I packed my things. Quietly. Respectfully. And I left. Melissa didn't even try to stop me. She just muttered, good luck with your little boyfriend, as I walked out the front door. I moved into Victor's place. A modest home filled with sunlight and art. He made me pancakes the first morning. Called me my Nora the second. Asked me to marry him the third week. And I said yes. Not because I needed to. But because I wanted to. Because love doesn't expire. It matures. It took me 75 years to be loved like this. And I wasn't going to waste another second hiding it. When we decided to get married, Victor didn't hesitate. Not once. There was no "are you sure?" or "what will people say?" He just looked at me across the breakfast table, over a plate of scrambled eggs and blueberries, and said, I'd like to call you my wife. And I said yes before I even blinked. We didn't want a big ceremony. I didn't need a gown or flower girls or a 3-tier cake. I'd done all that when I was 23, and while it was beautiful, it was never mine. It was what was expected. This time. I wanted something that felt like us. So we planned something small. Intimate. Elegant. A garden ceremony at Victor's home, under the magnolia tree he planted for his mother. His daughter, Alexis, flew in from Portland. She was warm, artistic, and instantly wrapped me in a hug when she arrived. You make him glow, she whispered. But telling my side of the family? That was another story entirely. I sent an invitation to Melissa anyway. A soft ivory card with gold lettering. I kept it simple. Nora and Victor invite you to celebrate their marriage. No drama. No begging. Just the facts. I wasn't surprised when Melissa didn't respond right away. What did surprise me was the group message I was accidentally left on the next evening. It was from my granddaughter, Ella, Melissa's youngest. I opened it without thinking. And there it was, plain as daylight. Grandma's getting married? LOL to who, some 90-year-old on Facebook? Another reply. She's like, ancient? Does this guy know she's not just in it for companionship? And then Melissa, my own daughter. I told her this would happen. She's embarrassing herself. If she goes through with this, I'm not coming. I sat on Victor's couch, phone in hand, pulse steady. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was done giving them the power to reduce me. This wasn't about their approval. It was about me. And Victor? He sat beside me, read the messages over my shoulder, and calmly said, they don't deserve front row seats to your joy. So we took them off the list. Except one. I still held out hope for Ella. She was young, 19, stuck between generations. Sometimes snarky, yes, but I saw flashes of decency in her. When her parents weren't around, she used to sit on the basement stairs and ask me about baking or old love stories. I sent her a personal note, handwritten. If you ever want to know what real love looks like, you'll find it under the magnolia tree at noon next Sunday. No pressure. Just truth. I didn't expect her to come. But she did. And she wasn't the only surprise that day. The morning of the wedding was soft and warm, with a breeze that smelled like spring and rosemary. I wore a pale blue dress, nothing extravagant, just enough to feel lovely. I had a white shawl over my shoulders, and Alexis pinned a lily in my hair. Victor wore a navy suit. His silver hair brushed back, his smile steady. He looked like every girl's dream and every critic's nightmare, a confident man who adored an older woman in public without shame. As guests trickled in, Victor's friends, some of his neighbors, Alexis's partner, I noticed a figure lingering near the hedges. It was Ella. She wore black leggings, a gray hoodie, and an expression that said, "I didn't come here for you. I just want to see the train wreck." Still, I smiled at her. "Welcome," I said, walking over. She looked me up and down. "You don't look old." I laughed gently. "That's because I'm not dead." She snorted. "Mom's gonna lose it." "She already has." We didn't say more. But she stayed. And when Victor and I exchanged vows, words we wrote ourselves, honest and trembling, I glanced toward Ella and caught her wiping her eyes. Victor said, "The world tells us love belongs to the young. But Nora, your love has redefined what living means. You remind me that there's still fire in the heart, even when the hair turns silver." When I said my part, I said, "You didn't make me feel young. You made me feel seen." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden, except mine. I felt everything, but not a single tear. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't mourning. I was becoming. The real storm came 3 days later. Victor posted a single photo on his business page. He doesn't use social media much, but when he does, people notice. The photo was simple, the two of us, standing beneath the magnolia tree, sunlight in our eyes, his hand over mine. Caption: "I married my best friend. Her name is Nora." The post went viral. Not TikTok teen viral. Business world viral. Because, you see, Victor wasn't just a retired architect. He was Victor Langston, co-founder of Langston Wyatt, one of the most respected eco-architecture firms in the state. They had designed green buildings in 4 countries. He'd been profiled in Architectural Digest. Twice. Melissa never knew that. Because Melissa never asked. Her husband, the one who once joked about me finding a bingo buddy, was a junior associate trying for a job at Langston Wyatt, and had been rejected. Victor didn't rub it in. He's not that kind of man. But the universe? Oh, it has a delicious sense of irony. A week after our wedding, Melissa called me. I let it ring. Then she texted, "So you married Victor Langston? Why didn't you tell us?" Another message, immediately after. "Tom applied to work at his firm. You could have helped." And the third message. "Please tell me you didn't say anything bad about us." I stared at those texts for a long time. Then I replied with just 4 words. "You never asked, Melissa." I haven't heard from her since. But Ella? She's come over 3 times. The first time, she said, "I wanted to know how you met him. The real story." The second time, she helped me bake apple scones. Told me she's thinking about transferring colleges. Said, "You know, maybe romance isn't dead after all." And the third time, she hugged me on the porch and whispered, "You look happier than I've ever seen you." She's right. Because I am. Victor and I still go dancing, every Thursday night, a small venue with a jazz trio and couples who don't mind if your knees creak as long as your smile is genuine. We read to each other. We plant herbs in the back garden. We make love with the windows open and the moon watching. And every now and then, I get a message. From strangers. From women like me. They say, "You gave me hope." And to them I say, it's never too late to be adored. It's never too late to rewrite the narrative. And it's definitely never too late to make them all eat their words. There's something funny about power. When people think you don't have any, they speak freely. Carelessly. They laugh at your expense, forget you're listening, dismiss your presence like you're a decorative lamp in the corner of the room. But once they realize you've got power, real power, they start to stumble over their words. Smile too wide. Call too often. That's what happened after the wedding. For 2 weeks, it was blissfully quiet. Victor and I traveled to Maine for a short honeymoon. We stayed in a bed and breakfast with a wraparound porch, walked barefoot on the beach, and shared lobster rolls on paper plates. At night, he'd read poetry aloud while I sipped tea and leaned into his shoulder. But when we came home, my phone had 6 missed calls from Melissa. And 4 voicemails. "Mom, I just wanted to check in. Call me when you're free. Hey, it's been a minute. We should catch up. I saw the article on Victor. Wow. Really impressive. Then finally, Tom's company might be interested in a collaboration with Langston Wyatt. Maybe Victor could take a look. There it was. The ask. I played the last message twice. Then I deleted it. Victor watched me from across the room. She'll keep trying. I know. Do you want me to say something? No, I said, sitting beside him. She needs to learn how to approach me like a daughter, not a fundraiser. He kissed the top of my head. Whatever you want, Nora. And what I wanted was clarity. I wasn't going to be petty, but I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore, either. If they wanted access to my life, they'd have to come through the front door, not sneak in through the side. So I waited. And sure enough, the invitation came. A brunch. Just family. At Melissa's house. This time, not in the basement. She even sent a handwritten card. Victor raised an eyebrow when I showed it to him. Diplomatic olive branch. Or a setup, I smirked. Still, I accepted. We drove over Sunday morning. I wore a soft yellow blouse and my sage green cardigan. Victor wore a blazer, though he didn't need to. He always looked like money even in jeans. I told him to keep his voice soft. Polite. Let them squirm on their own. Melissa greeted us at the door like she'd just remembered how to smile. Mom. Victor. Come in, come in. The house was exactly as I'd remembered, sleek, curated, and cold. Candles with no wicks. Art with no soul. She led us to the dining room, where Tom sat pouring mimosas. Victor, he said, standing. It's an honor. Big fan of your work. Victor shook his hand with perfect ease. Thanks, Tom. Heard you're interested in commercial sustainability. Exciting space. Tom beamed. And then Melissa looked at me like I was a prop. So, Mom, tell us all about married life. I smiled sweetly. It's nice to sleep on a real mattress again. She blinked. I continued, not a cot in a basement with a cracked lamp and no heat. It's amazing how love softens everything, even the morning air. Ella snorted behind her napkin. Tom cleared his throat. Well, we're glad you're happy. Happy and busy, I said. Victor and I are working on a community design grant. Senior-friendly green housing. We're hosting an event next month. Melissa's eyes lit up. Really? What kind of event? Victor leaned in. A donor dinner. A few CEOs, a few journalists. Very low-key. And then, like clockwork, Tom pounced. That sounds incredible. I'd love to come. Maybe even sponsor something. Victor nodded slowly. We're still curating the guest list. Melissa's smile faltered. That's when I knew they didn't want me back. They wanted the world I was now connected to. So I asked a question I knew would draw out the truth. Melissa, what do you think I do all day? She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, now that I'm not in your basement folding laundry and watching your dog. Who do you think I am? I don't know. A wife. A public speaker, I said. A mentor. I lead workshops. Victor and I consult on age-inclusive design. We just did a talk at UW. Her mouth opened, then closed. Tom muttered, wow, that's impressive. And Ella, who had been quiet the whole time, finally chimed in. You're cooler than half the influencers I follow. I grinned. And my joints crack more too. We all laughed, except Melissa. Her face tightened like a mask drying too fast. You've changed, Mom. I looked her square in the eye. No. I've just stopped apologizing for existing. The table went quiet. Then Victor raised his glass. To Nora. For showing us that age doesn't define relevance. Ella clinked hers to mine first. Melissa didn't even lift hers. The visit ended shortly after. Melissa hugged me stiffly. Tom asked again about the donor event. Victor smiled and handed him a printed flyer, with no RSVP info. In the car, I leaned back and exhaled. They'll never see me the same again, I said. They'll try, Victor replied. But that image they built of you, quiet, convenient, invisible, it's crumbled. And people don't like stepping over rubble. He was right. The next few weeks, things shifted. Melissa stopped texting. Tom sent one email, a soft nudge, that I ignored. But Ella? Ella came over more often. We talked about college, about boys, about the kind of woman she wanted to be. She said, I think I used to be afraid of aging. Now I just hope I end up like you. One night, she found an old photo album I kept tucked away. She flipped through it, pausing at a picture of me in my 30s, holding a pie with one hand and my toddler Melissa on my hip. You've always been strong, she whispered. I just forgot for a while. You think Mom will ever get it? I think some people only respect what they can control. And when they lose control, they panic. Ella nodded. Then she hugged me. And that hug, that moment, meant more than any brunch invitation or fake smile ever could. Love isn't always given. Sometimes, you have to reclaim it. And respect? Respect starts with not shrinking to fit someone else's limits. I used to think the cruelest thing someone could do was reject you. But I've learned there's something worse. It's pretending you don't exist until you have something they want. That's what Melissa was doing now, circling back, not with apologies, but with opportunities. Every text was coated in fake sweetness, like old fruit dipped in sugar. Every message started with just checking in, and ended with a nudge about introductions, access, or appearances. It was tiring. But I wasn't tired. Not anymore. Victor and I had become something of a local curiosity, the architect and the viral widow, as one podcast had dubbed me. What started as curiosity turned into admiration. People began reaching out not because of who Victor was, but because of who I was becoming. A woman who defied the narrative. A woman who got her second chapter. That fall, I was asked to speak at the Aging and Dignity Summit, a national conference hosted in Chicago. At first, I laughed. What could I possibly say that professionals haven't already said better? Victor only smiled. You have something they don't, lived truth. So I accepted. The organizers flew me out, covered everything, even gave me a stylist to help me pick an outfit for the keynote. I chose a fitted dark green blazer over a pearl blouse, paired with slacks and the same comfortable shoes I'd worn on my first date with Victor. I want to look strong, I told the stylist. You already do, she said. The night before my speech, I got a call. Melissa. For the first time in weeks. I stared at my phone, then picked up. Not to reconnect. Just to witness whatever twist she had prepared. Hi Mom, she chirped. You're in Chicago, right? I saw something online about a summit. Yes. Well, you'll never believe this, but Tom's client is actually speaking on one of the panels. Small world. I waited. Quiet. Then she said, I was thinking, maybe we fly out, attend your talk, make it a family thing? We could grab dinner after. I think it would be nice. The kids could even watch the live stream. There it was. The angle. The same woman who called my romance embarrassing now wanted to be seen sitting beside me on a national stage. I smiled gently, even though she couldn't see it. I'm flattered, Melissa. But the event is fully booked. And I think this one's meant to be mine. A pause. You mean you don't want us there? I mean I've had enough of being used as decoration. Silence. Then she mumbled, okay. Well, have a good speech, I guess. And she hung up. I felt nothing but peace. The next morning, I stood behind the curtain as the host introduced me. Please welcome a woman who broke every assumption about aging, love, and purpose, Nora Langston. The applause was immediate. I walked out, heart steady, head high. There were 400 people in that ballroom. Another 1,000 online. I stood in front of them, not as a grandma. Not as someone's mother. But as me. And I spoke the truth. I told them about the basement. About the jokes at dinner. About being called a burden with a smile. Then I told them about Victor. And how love didn't save me, but it reminded me that I wasn't finished. You're not expired, I said, my voice clear. You're evolving. We spend our lives raising others, children, families, systems. And when they no longer need us, they forget we still need ourselves. We still dream. We still ache. We still want to be touched, heard, respected, seen. And I closed with this. They said I was too old for romance. But romance isn't roses and dinner dates. It's someone seeing you, all of you, and still choosing to love the lines you've earned. And the next time someone calls you too old, smile. Because you know something they don't. You're just getting started. The room stood, cheering, crying. Afterward, people came up to hug me, thank me, shake my hand. One woman whispered, "I left my marriage last week. Your story made me feel brave." A man in his 60s said, "I just texted the woman I never got over. Thank you." Victor found me backstage, eyes wet. "You didn't speak," I teased. "I couldn't," he said. "My voice would have cracked." We flew home the next morning. 2 days later, a package arrived on our doorstep. Inside was a bouquet of peonies, Melissa's favorite. Tucked inside was a note in her handwriting. "You made me cry. I still don't know how to say I'm sorry. But I'm listening now. M." It wasn't enough. But it was a start. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I tucked the note in my journal. Because here's the thing. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean inviting people back into your life at full volume. It means understanding your own worth so deeply that no one else's doubt can touch it. The next month, I launched my own podcast, Second Bloom, where I interview women over 60 about love, reinvention, and power. My first guest was Gloria, a 79-year-old who took a belly dancing class after her husband passed. My second was a former librarian who published her first poetry book at 82. We laughed. We cried. We reminded each other, and our listeners, that time is not the enemy. And every episode ends with my signature line. They called us too old for romance. They didn't realize. We're the ones writing the love stories now. Melissa doesn't knock when she shows up. She just stands on the front porch one Thursday afternoon, holding a box of lemon muffins like they make up for 3 years of silence and sarcasm. Victor sees her first through the kitchen window. He sets down his mug and quietly says, "She's here." I don't rush to the door. I finish steeping my tea. I stir in the honey. I take one long sip. Then I open the door. She's wearing jeans and a crisp white blouse, makeup too perfect, smile a little too polished. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Melissa." She lifts the box. "Thought I'd stop by. I remembered you used to like lemon muffins." I raise an eyebrow. "You also remembered where I live now?" Her smile tightens. "I saw the new podcast episode. It was moving. You didn't mention the last 4. She steps inside slowly. "May I come in?" Victor is already in the sunroom, respectfully giving space. I gesture toward the living room couch. She sets the box on the table and sits across from me. For a few moments, she says nothing. Just fidgets with her hands, tapping a nervous rhythm against her knee. Then finally, "I don't know how to fix things with you." "That's because you're not supposed to fix me, Melissa," I say. "You're supposed to see me." She looks up, guilt flashing across her face. "I do now. Or at least I'm trying to." I nod slowly, keeping my voice level. "Then let's begin there. You treated me like a burden. You mocked my grief. You reduced my loneliness to a punchline. And you didn't listen, until I became useful." Tears rise in her eyes. She blinks hard. "I was wrong." "That's true." "I was jealous," she adds, voice cracking. "I know that sounds ridiculous. But you started glowing. People were asking about you. Not me. And I." She trails off. I let the silence stretch, not to punish, but to allow the weight of it to sit. Then I say, "You were raised by a woman who never asked for praise. But now that I've found my voice, I'm not giving it back to make you comfortable." She nods, quietly wiping her eyes. "I want to earn your trust again," she says. "I don't expect you to just forget what I said, but I want to show up now." I sip my tea. Then I ask, "Why now?" She exhales. "Because Ella talks about you every day. Because she called you her role model. Because when I told her I felt left out, she said, 'Then go apologize instead of playing the victim.' That makes me smile." She's sharper than you were at her age. She's braver too. We sit in silence for a beat. Then I say, "Tell me one thing you admire about me." She looks startled. "Right now?" "Yes. One thing you truly admire. Not because it benefits you. Just because it's true." She thinks. Really thinks. Then softly, "You never gave up on yourself, even when we did." That sits right in the center of my chest. It doesn't undo the hurt, but it presses gently on the place where healing might grow. I stand up and walk to the kitchen. When I return, I hand her a single yellow tulip from the vase on the windowsill. "This doesn't mean I forgive you, but it means you're welcome to come back, as a guest. Not a critic." She nods and takes the flower. Victor walks in a few minutes later and offers coffee. The tension softens. She declines politely and says goodbye soon after. And when the door closes, I don't feel shaken. I feel clear. That night, I sit with Victor in the garden, under the string lights we hung together last month. The air smells like basil and fresh soil. He wraps an arm around my shoulder. "She's trying," he says. "She is. You think you'll trust her again?" "I think she has to trust me first, that I'll never shrink again just to keep her close." Victor smiles. "That's the woman I married." Later that week, I get an email from the producer of a national talk show. They want to feature Second Bloom in their Voices That Matter segment. A 10-minute slot. Broadcast to millions. They ask if I'll bring a guest from the podcast. Someone who inspired me. I already know who it's going to be. Ella. She's stunned when I ask her. "Me? On TV?" "You," I say, "are the proof that change is possible, and that listening across generations is how we all move forward." She starts crying on the phone. "Mom is going to be so mad." Then she'll have something to work on. We fly to New York together. She wears a navy jumpsuit and curls her hair. I wear my sage green cardigan, the one I wore in my first video with Victor, and a long silver necklace. On stage, I tell the story again, but this time, I let Ella finish it. My grandmother didn't just find love. She found herself. And then she gave the rest of us permission to do the same. The crowd erupts. After the segment, a producer pulls me aside and asks if I'd consider writing a book. "You've already started a movement," she says. "Why not leave something they can hold in their hands?" I say yes. Because I have more to say. Because there are still women sitting in silence, convinced it's too late for them. And I want them to know, it's not. The following week, Melissa calls again. No request. No gossip. Just, "I watched the show. You were brilliant." I thank her. Then I say, Ella gets her courage from somewhere. Melissa is quiet for a long moment. Then gently, "I think maybe. I'm finally learning how to be your daughter. Not just expect you to be my mother." That, for once, sounds real. We make plans for coffee. Just the two of us. No muffins. No fake smiles. Just two women, learning how to be honest with each other. I hang up and walk outside. Victor is planting new herbs in the raised beds. He looks up and grins. I call out, "You ready for a book tour, Mr. Langston?" He laughs. "Only if I get a co-author credit." I walk over, kneel beside him, and run my fingers through the soil. "It's funny," I say, "I spent so long thinking I was too old for anything new." "And now?" he asks. "Now," I smile, "I'm too alive to ever settle again." The first time I held the book in my hands, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I expected some cinematic tear-streaked moment with music playing in the background, but instead, I just smiled. Quietly. Fully. Like someone who had finally been given back everything she thought she lost. Second Bloom, Finding Love, Voice, and Power After 70, the cover was simple. Ivory background. My name in clear, elegant print. A photo of a blooming magnolia tree wrapped gently along the spine. Victor's idea, of course. "You bloomed later," he said when we submitted the design. "But you bloomed stronger." The book launched quietly at first, a modest printing, a few podcast interviews, and one local bookstore event that packed every folding chair in the room. But within 2 weeks, something shifted. People started posting about it. granddaughters gifting it to their grandmothers. Older women reading it aloud at community centers. A nurse in Nevada wrote me a handwritten letter, "You gave me the courage to leave my son's house and find my own place again." Within a month, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. I was 76 years old. I'd spent a lifetime living quietly, letting other people define the terms of my worth. And now, I was on the shelf beside authors I used to whisper about in the library. Victor and I traveled more, not for glamour, but for connection. Bookstores, senior centers, small radio stations, podcasts. I sat across from hosts who were 30 years younger than me and spoke about dignity, reinvention, and the power of doing things out of order. Most people live like life is a staircase. But some of us? We build the staircase after we've already started climbing. People quoted that line back to me for months. One morning, over coffee on the patio, Victor looked at me and said, "Do you ever miss the quiet life?" I thought about that. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," I said. "But I don't miss the silence." Because silence, the kind I lived in for years, was never peace. It was a cage. Now? My world wasn't just louder, it was mine. Melissa changed slowly. Carefully. Not overnight. But she started showing up, not with muffins, not with expectations, but with questions. "Do you want to come to Ella's open mic night?" "I was thinking of starting a journal. Do you think writing could help? Can we talk about the book together?" There were parts that felt like you were talking directly to me. I didn't rush to forgive. But I let her pull up a chair at the table again. And to her credit, she stayed. Even when it was hard. Ella, on the other hand, had become my shadow. My partner in crime. My favorite co-pilot. She even started a short YouTube series where she interviewed women over 60 about their dreams. "This isn't about past lives," she said in her intro. "This is about next lives." Victor and I watched every episode, beaming. The older I got, the more people asked me the same question, "What's your secret?" And every time, I gave the same answer. I stopped waiting for permission. That's really it. I stopped waiting for someone to say I was allowed to be loved again, to be wanted again, to be heard. One spring morning, I stood beneath the same magnolia tree where Victor and I were married. The blossoms were just beginning to fall, their pink and white petals blanketing the grass like confetti. A local reporter had asked if I'd do a small photo shoot for an article titled, "The Grandmother Who Became America's New Voice." I said yes, but only if they took the photo here. As the photographer adjusted his lens, Victor stood off to the side, arms crossed, smiling like a man who still couldn't believe his wife had become a symbol. I turned to him. "You think it's too much?" He grinned. "No. I think it's just enough." He took my hand and kissed my knuckles. The click of the camera froze us in that moment, me in my sage green cardigan and soft smile, him elegant and proud, the blossoms swirling around us like the past being rewritten in real time. That photo would end up on the cover of Time magazine's special feature on reinvention. I didn't care about the fame. I cared that the story mattered. Because too many women are still told they're done at 50. Or 60. Or 70. That they're lucky if anyone calls. Lucky if they're remembered. Lucky if they're still alive. But I wasn't just alive. I was seen. I was wanted. I was envied, not because of revenge, not because of bitterness, but because I had the courage to choose myself before anyone else finally did. On the anniversary of our wedding, Victor took me back to the jazz club we visited on one of our earliest dates. The band played soft and slow. The lights were low. My hips ached a little more than they used to, but I still stood when he reached for my hand. We danced. No fanfare. No audience. Just two people in love, in rhythm, in defiance of every clock that tried to run out on them. "You still take my breath away," he whispered in my ear. I smiled. "You still give me reason to breathe." And somewhere in the background, I imagined all those voices, the ones who called me expired, irrelevant, too emotional, too late, fading into nothing. Because they were wrong. So wrong. And I was just getting started.